Coming up in today's episode.
Individual took product from me and I started chasing them just because out of reaction, I've invested so much time into this. And he turned around and he shot at my truck.
Welcome to episode 102 of Enter the Mind podcast, the most real talk, no nonsense podcast on the empowering of the mind. Today's guest is Benjamin John. He's the owner of Precision Patio Covers and also a certified coach, mentor, and speaker for Grant Cardone and the 10X team. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for the strong intro there. Well, I got to say, the 102nd episode, real quick.
That's correct.
You guys have been putting in work.
Yeah, it's all about the consistency, right?
100%. Yeah, I love hearing that. Anytime someone's, been doing a podcast for a year or past their 100th episode, it's like, okay, starting to get some traction here.
Yeah, 102. It's a lot. Kira, I think that deserves a 10X button push. Can you push that?
You're sick of it. I'm sick of it. Everybody around you is sick of it. Don't bitch out.
That's right. All right, that's perfect. That's why we got to episode 102, because we didn't bitch out. So, all right. That being said, yeah, exactly. Grant knows. He's watching us like spiritually.
Absolutely, man.
Now, so let's get into your story really quick, right? We have a lot to talk about today. We'll talk about your coaching, how that works. Talk about how you built this company, the construction company. But first, let's begin with personal story. All right. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So there's I think I was talking to you a little bit about this earlier, but I'm going to try to give you the condensed version of it because it's easy for me to get derailed in my stories because there's really, it's hard to tell the story without, doing a disservice to it. You know what I mean? Because there's layers and there's more depth to this. But essentially, I grew up like a lot of people, with the wrong views of money and what it looks like to be successful growing up. So I spent most of my life living that way. I looked at my mom and most other people in regards to how they live their life and their, what their version of success looked like. And that's how I live my life, work at a job for 30 years, get a retirement plan, be comfortable, be happy, and not really be ambitious. That's what I seen around me. That's what I seen in my family. That's what I seen in my friends. And, I was in the working class until 30 years old. And that's when I started. I had a business partner that I built a sunroom for. Let's just back up a little bit here. And she always prodded at me saying, we're going to start a business together. And, I never took her seriously, but the time came. I was hitting about a 10-year mark. I was almost 10 years in this business working construction as a carpenter. And she knew I wasn't happy. I'm like, man, this is not the way I want to live my life. I was working side by side next to a 65-year-old individual. And I could juxtaposition and see he was not happy. He was not living a very satisfying life. And I looked at that and said, that is not what I want to do the rest of my life. So anyways, me and my business partner decided to go into a business after looking at different industries, different things to do. We ultimately landed on the marijuana growing business. And this is a really interesting part of my story because this is not something that I had any experience in. I was chasing money. And so I did it for the wrong reasons. I wanted to leave my job because I wasn't financially free. But the reasons for getting more money was not in alignment with me. And so what ended up happening was we started this business. We did it for 2 years, but everything didn't go as planned. We didn't hit the numbers we were going to hit. I was doing things illegally, on the streets, selling pounds of marijuana to people I didn't even know on Craigslist. I ended up getting robbed at one point. I got shot at. Individual took product from me and I started chasing them just because out of reaction, I've invested so much time into this. And he turned around and he shot at my truck. And it literally, thinking about it now, just kind of puts hair up on the back of my neck because it was so surreal, right? Like getting shot at, you don't expect that on the streets, right? It's like, that's war stuff you'd expect in war. And I didn't sign up for war. So I started looking at my life and thinking wow, this is a pretty risky industry. I didn't know this is what it would take to get financially free. So I jumped into just a crazy industry. And you would think I would stop after that, but I didn't. So I ended up mailing also product across the United States in bulk. Did this for 2 years, just jeopardized my life, my freedom. I'm a single dad and I have a 10-year-old daughter. And so I jeopardized my time with her. There's a lot of things I was kind of putting in perspective during that time. I ended up wrecking my truck because I was working so hard on this operation. It requires a lot of hours, day in and day night. And there's sometimes I was running on 3 to 5 hours of sleep. So all these things happened, right? Eventually, I ended up walking away from that industry and starting over and not knowing what I was going to do. And at that time, I had my nephew. He just dished some ideas off to me. He's like, just start your own business. And it never occurred to me I could do that. It was just someone just telling me, like, you should start your own business. Just planted a seed immediately. And that night I drew my logo, and it's the same logo we use to this day in the business. We're about 5 years old now. So it was just a commitment I made at that point. And, it wasn't successful. I failed the first year and a half at business. I didn't know how to run a business. I knew how to do the job, but I didn't know how to do the bookkeeping, the payroll, the taxes, all the things, that come with a business that I had no idea about. I didn't go to business school. I didn't take accounting class or none of that stuff. And so I had to navigate all this myself and learn the hard way. The same nephew that told me to start my business handed me the 10X rule about a year and a half later. And that's when I found mentorship. So that's when I actually got someone to latch onto and kind of model, mimic, and master. And that's where I really started making progress in my business and in my life in general, just the strategies and the things that I started changing in my life, started implementing into the business and in my life. It just completely transformed my entire outcome of everything. And then next thing you know,
quick, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So your mentor was through the 10X program?
Yeah. So Grant Cardone, thanks. That's a good question. So, my Grant Cardone's my mentor. And the reason I found him was because, my nephew handed me the 10X rule book and he said, read this. I think you'll get a kick out of this guy. You'll relate to him. And I didn't read it for a week or two. It sat around. And then he called me and said, have you read the book yet? I was like, no, I didn't get around to it yet. And so I made it a point to start reading it. And just so you know, I'm not a big reader. I'm more of a reader now, but at that time, definitely not a reader. And I started reading it and I couldn't stop reading it. And that's how I knew I found something good, because it had been years since I started reading something and just couldn't stop. And you know the feeling, right? When it's something that's that valuable and you're resonating with it and you're just, you're connecting with it, you got something good. And that's where it started with my mentorship journey with Grant.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've read that book too, the 10X, and it's, it's really good stuff. Very uplifting.
Absolutely. It's one of the best books, in my opinion.
So once you read that, what sort of things started to change for you?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what the 10X rule is, the concept is just massive action. So whatever amount of energy you think it takes to accomplish something, it actually takes at least 10 times that amount to produce any type of result. And so that is one of the concepts that I implemented into the business in my life that was an immediate game changer. But there's so much more to it. So you can say, like, massive action is pretty broad, but what does that look like for each individual task? Like, okay, I got to make, 10 phone calls today. Okay, we'll make 100 phone calls instead. Okay, I got to write 3 pages in my book today. Okay, we'll write 30 pages today. Like, it literally just means apply every, 10 times at least the amount of action into every single task to produce some real results. And that is one of the things that got it kickstarted. And from there, as I dove into Cardone University and got invested in the company, I found out that there's just so much more to the sales industry in general. And that was one of my biggest problems in the business. I could not close somebody. I could sell them and I was doing all kinds of bids, but I could not close somebody. And that was the real game changer. Out of all the strategies I learned was how to ask hard questions, how to move the needle in the sales process, how to follow a sales process, what a sales process is. The sales process is probably the single most thing that I learned the most value in, because I was able to actually get people to exchange and transact with me.
Yeah, that's so valuable, because I think entrepreneurship is such a great thing, and so many people have these great ideas of businesses to start, but kind of like you said, a lot of the time you don't have, when you start a business, you don't have a huge background in accounting, in marketing, in sales, all this stuff. You just know how to make the thing that you make for the company or provide the service that you provide. And so
right. Usually one thing, yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying you started the precision patio covers company, and but then you needed to learn all of the accounting and the sales process and then 10X is what taught you how to do that, right?
Yeah, no. So more specifically, 10X taught me that I shouldn't be wearing all my hats. Yeah. So I realized I was trying to do everything myself. And like I said, that's why I was saying there's so many layers. And one of the things I learned regarding that topic is that I was trying to do it all. I was, just so you know, like I've done a lot of self-development. And one of the things that was not helping me was like I was a perfectionist. I didn't want to relinquish my duties to other people. I couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't put my faith in them to sell a product, to build it, to do the accounting, all that stuff. And so that was one of the things I learned was like, you cannot grow a business. There's no one business out there that's massively successful that's being ran by one person. Like it takes a team. It takes a team of experts in different departments. And so that was one of the things I learned was like, man, get rid of some of these hats, give people the jobs. I mean, that's the only way I was going to be able to scale. And that's one of the things I did in order to be able to scale so I can work on the business and not in it.
And was it hard to financially bring on all of these people? I mean, it takes to pay employees. That's a lot of expenses. Like that's, totally. I think that would be a big concern for a lot of people. And for me, especially, it's like, what if I'm not making enough money to hire all of these different people?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. So one thing I learned is that people don't cost money. Like that's a misconception. Like business owners think that people cost money. Like you have to hire people and pay them. Sure, technically speaking, that's the case, but not having people cost you money. That's what really costs you money. Like not having a team, not having people is detrimental to the scale of a business. And so that was the concept I had to get into my head as well, is that, that very thing. So you got to really get past it. The business owners that are like me, they got to really take a risk on people. And the answer to what you were saying is sales. Like sales is so marketing is the heartbeat of the company. The sales is like the blood flow. So as long as those two things are going, the employee part will get worked out. Like, you know what I mean? I found that was not one of the biggest things, the employee payroll rather. It wasn't one of my biggest concerns. Not selling is the biggest concern for any business, in my opinion. Yeah,
that's a big quote, I think, right there.
It's true, man.
Not selling is the biggest concern, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I wasn't kidding when I said I wasted a year or more of my time. I would spend hours. Like if you called me up and you said, hey, we're looking to build a sunroom, and I went over to your house, I'd spend a couple hours on your house, on your drawing, on the bid, the proposal. I would go home, I'd email it to you. I'd try to get a hold of you. I wouldn't get an email back. I wouldn't get a call back, and I would get ghosted 24/7. And so I took a beating for a while, and I couldn't figure out why. And that, like I said, that specific experience for me proved that it was literally just a strategy that I had to learn to change my outcome.
Yeah, I love that lesson and the message, because the pitfall, I think, for people is to get caught up in the frustration of, why am I spending all this time and I should be getting the sales. People are not, why aren't they buying from me? What's wrong? And, I'm upset at the world and all of this stuff, which is all just victim mindset. But there's a beauty in the vibration that you're speaking at, because it's so clean and it's so logical and straightforward of like, this is what I was doing. I wasn't getting the result. I had to learn a different way of doing it. I did that. And when I did that, I got this result that I wanted. it's
100%.
it's so like ABC linear,
Yes.
in the best way possible.
And I use that story to emphasize why I'm so passionate and why I got involved in the Cardone with Grant and the 10X team, is because it works. Like, I implemented it into my life, and it made some massive changes. So I want to do that for other people as well.
What made me curious is when you said like you had never started a business before and you were given the idea like, hey, like start your own business, but you had started the grow business, and I know that it was illegal and you didn't necessarily hit your marks. You still made a darn good amount of money, right?
Yeah, for someone who just was doing, I didn't know what I was doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for somebody who didn't know what they were doing, just went into this like grow business because they wanted to make money, wound up scaling the bitch, right? Scaling the bitch, wound up having to obviously like shut that down because just was not a good life, not what you wanted to do. So then when you heard the idea of like the business, you were like, oh, like a real like business. Like, this is what you want me to do. So when you started that, I know that you fucked up for like the first year and a half, but I'm kind of wondering what was going on like mentally for you. Did you like throw yourself into it and you were like, okay, like this is what I'm doing now. Like this life is done. Like I'm into this. Or was it more like this didn't necessarily work out and I'm a little bit nervous about this and I have no idea what the fuck I'm going to do. And like, I'm just going to fucking do it.
A little bit of both, but more nervousness than anything. Absolutely. I was 100% scared. I think most people would tell you starting a business their first time, they're probably terrified. Unless they're in a really good position financially already and it's more of a hobby thing. It's for my situation, it was going to be my livelihood and my main derivative of income. So I had to make it work. If not, I'd be going back to work for somebody. And
I have another question that popped up as you were speaking. Before you started your marijuana business, like what were the thoughts going through your mind? You know, was it, I'm going to scale this business, I'm going to grow it? Or was it money, 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 money? Or was it, I am amazing and I deserve this? Like what was going through your mind during the marijuana business and then your PPC business?
Yeah, so it seemed like it was a good idea because everybody here in this state does it legally and illegally. And so it seemed pretty achievable. Although I was scared, I was pretty hopeful that we would figure it out. The building part, because I had to build out this location, that part was scary because I didn't know how to do a lot of things. So I don't know. I was trying to be confident about it, but I didn't know what I was doing. So literally we were YouTubing stuff all day, every day, trying to implement stuff because because we were on top of being scared. We didn't know what we were doing. So literally a lot of this motivations to me, when I look back on it, was money driven.
So are you saying that you didn't know what you were doing, but you had a target in mind?
Exactly.
So that's the breaker right there. So that's,
and we were figuring it out as we went, which is pretty not a great business plan for anybody who's listening.
Well, that's what I wanted to point out, especially for our listeners, is the fact that, you know, in order to receive money, there are so many different ways in the world, you know, so many different vibrations for you to get on to receive money. But Ben specifically hopped on the vibration of, I have a target in mind. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I see this target. And because he had that target, he was able to scale an illegal marijuana business, and he was able to end that and now do very, very well with his PPC. So it's that target. You know, you don't always have to know what you're doing, but it's that target that you need in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand what you're saying. And to be honest, like what you're talking about, that industry actually taught me some things regarding that. So when you ask somebody for a lot of money for the first time, it's difficult. I think it was difficult for me. And I've heard this story a lot of times from other people. Like, it's a little bit different asking somebody to do business with you for $200, $500 versus $20,000 or something like that, or $50,000, right? And so that was something I had to change in my, because you're talking about like what kind of vibration. That was another problem for me in the business as well. And so that illegal operation actually taught me how to ask for a large amount of money and be comfortable with that. But I also still, when I started PPC, I had that problem again, you know, when I go on site and do a bid and the project's $80,000 to $100,000, I would start doing things in my head, like discounting it, just stupid things. I can't ask them for that much. Like it's a 80, maybe I should take off 10, you know, I'm sitting there adjust. And then what would happen is I would screw myself and I wouldn't hit my profit margins. And I'm like, wow, I just screwed myself because I was worried about asking them what I was worth. And so that was something I had to learn. And my worth, value, really what gave me the confidence to ask somebody for $100,000.
That was so fucking good right there. That one set of words, you said, I was worried about asking for what I was worth. That was just like a whole click. You need to quote it, put it on a shirt.
Yeah, I love that too, because it speaks to the psychology of business, right? There's psychology in everything. And, you know, this podcast being called Enter the Mind, I mean, here we are entering the mind. This is how the thoughts that we think affect our actions. It's a perfect example, right? You had a belief inside of you. You had an emotion of guilt and like, this is a lot of money to ask them. Like, I don't know if I should. And it caused you to do something that was counterproductive to the goal you were trying to achieve.
Yeah. But I recognize that. It took me a while to figure that out. But once I did, I knew that was something that needed to be addressed. So yeah, there's a lot of things. And I'm glad you pointed that out, Robert, because sales is very much psychological. And it's not, you know, sales can also have a bad rap and a stigma to it. There's bad, good and bad in everything. But from my approach and from the 10X team's approach, it is our obligation and our duty to get you to do business with us so that we can solve your problem and provide the value. Like there's no value provided until there's an actual transaction that's being taken place. So there's a whole process to that. And people are funny when it comes to money, right? People get funny when it comes to money. And so you got to really get in their head a little bit and understand how, you know, the neocortex and the midbrain and the croc brain works and all that stuff and like what people react to and stuff like that. Yeah, there's different terms of it, but you know what I'm talking about.
I actually super like the croc brain. Have you ever heard of Wim Hof?
Yes.
Okay, and Robert, you know who Wim Hof is, right? We've talked about him. Okay, so when he's doing like his breath work where we and then we hold for like a minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes, he walks you through it. And like he walks you through like what you might be feeling. And he's like, the crocodile says that you can't breathe. The crocodile says that you need air. You know, that you are not the crocodile. And it's so interesting the way that he walks you through it. So that croc brain was super interesting. But I did want to ask you a question. So did you grow up with a great home life? Did you grow up with a lot of money? Did you grow up with the things that you wanted? Or did you kind of come into those things that you wanted later in life?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I talk a lot about mentorship and my story. To answer your question, no, I didn't have, my dad wasn't around. He split when I was like 3. So I had a couple stepdads in my life and I never connected with them. And so I grew up very differently than where my life is right now. I was in juvenile systems a lot. I was constantly stealing, lying, causing crimes and doing stuff like that. And probably till about 15 years old, I did that. So from like 11 to 15, it was a good few year period as a kid where my mom just couldn't control me. I ended up going to a foster home for a year. There was a lot of things that was unstable in me because I didn't have any mentorship. And I have a book I'm writing. It's called The Misguided Mentor, where I kind of self-title myself that. And it's going to talk a lot about that, about how the value of mentorship, how valuable it is, how people look up to you as a mentor, whether you know it or not, how it plays a part in everybody's life from birth till you die. There's old people that look for mentors. There's young people that look for mentors. Like, there's so many layers I'm peeling back on this about mentorship. And I think my life is a good encompassment of what a lack of mentorship looks like and what good mentorship looks like.
Right on. And really quick, before we wrap up, I want to ask specifically about this mentorship, because it's such a all-encompassing, broad term, mentorship, right? When you got your mentorship, which sounds like it was extremely helpful in helping you build your business and everything, are we talking like what, weekly phone calls? Are we talking monthly live events? Can you just paint the clear picture so people don't think mentorship and think something else, that it wasn't for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Mentorship can look a little different for everybody. For me, and for what Grant's got set up right now, if you guys have heard about Cardone University, it's one of the programs I sell for him now. It's the same program I've been training on for 3 years. It's the program that had helped me scale, because it's basically just incremental videos in a system that you can watch. So whatever it is that you need to focus on, you can watch these videos and get an answer and get a solution out of it. So Cardone University is one element of it, and that's basically a training program that's done daily, and it's expected for you to do X amount of videos per day, just to get the consistency and accountability thing structured. And then, yes, weekly coaching calls. There's actually two coaching calls a week. And there's other things I'm involved in with, like 10X mentoring and a couple other Zoom calls. But yeah, that looks like weekly calls, everyday training, and just accountability. The key word is accountability, because that was one thing that I noticed I needed. Like, I need somebody holding me accountable, somebody to check in with, because that's what makes my employees productive, is when I'm holding them accountable. So that was something that was new to me. Like, I need somebody to hold me accountable. But yes, everybody actually does.
Yeah.
Got it. So you're a coach right now. So you provide some of these services, or you help other business owners that are up and coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do the same thing Grant does. That's why I partner with him. So all the Cardone University, the sales teams and sales reps, I get them set up on those types of programs. Also with me, though, I have my own company called Massive Impact Coaching. And so what I do is I basically combine me with the program. And so you're going to get weekly coaching calls from me personally. And so I'm also in the process of building out very quickly a training program much similar to Grant's. And so it's going to be a lot easier for people to access it and a little more convenient. And so I'm really excited about that. And I'll definitely keep people updated on that, because it's going to be pretty professional.
So if people maybe are business owners themselves and think they would benefit from this coaching, how can they find out more about you?
Yeah, reach out to me at benjaminjohn.net. You can follow me on Instagram at benjaminjohnmic, or on LinkedIn. But I think you can find all those links at benjaminjohn.net. So go ahead. There's a contact form you can fill out if you want to chat with me. I'd be happy to chat with anybody for free and see what kind of, do a discovery scholar strategy session with them and see how I can help.
Awesome. Any final thoughts, Kira?
Final thoughts, I guess that I would say, Ben, is there one thing on your heart that you feel like you're being called to say to anyone who's listening?
So I would say invest in yourself. It's the best investment you'll ever make. I never really thought about investing in yourself as an investment until I started doing it. I've spent like a couple $100,000 in my own training and knowledge and stuff like that, and I will continue to do so. But I would say for somebody trying to get to the next level, be better, and trying to acquire new skills and strategies, you got to make an investment. You got to invest time or money, or both. Like, the reason you probably don't have time or money right now, like Grant says, is because you don't invest time or money. You got to invest it to get it.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining today, Ben, and we'll see everybody in next week's episode.
Did you find at least one gold nugget in today's episode? Then please like and subscribe and share it with a friend. And finally, if you're looking for a community of like-minded people, join our free Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/enterthemind.